2026 Formula 1 season hasn't even started, yet here I am talking about 2027. Specifically drivers, because with 22 seats now available, let's get predicting. Let's see what the driver lineup might look like next year and reflect on how I predicted things last time out. My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. So at the start of 25, I made predictions for the 26 season. My life was very different. I was in a different house and I didn't have an echoey new room. These will be going up to help with the echo, but welcome to my new setup. Anyway, who did I predict right? Who did I predict wrong? McLaren, unchanged, correct. Ferrari, unchanged, correct. Audi, unchanged, correct. Mercedes, unchanged, correct. The first incorrect prediction I said it would still be Isaac Hadjar at Racing Bulls. He has instead taken the step up to Red Bull Racing, surprising many of us. A huge season from Isaac, and he absolutely deserved the seat. Of course, Liam Lawson remains in the Racing Bulls. Alpine, unchanged, correct. Williams, unchanged, correct. Red Bull, again, wrong. I thought Lawson was going to do well in the Red Bull, and maybe he would have if he was given the time, but I guess we'll never know. So that's wrong. Aston Martin, Alonso, yes, I said Tsunoda would replace Stroll for 26, and it hasn't happened. Yuki is completely out of a seat. He is test and reserve at Red Bull Racing. Maybe next year, maybe. Aston's always a tricky prediction. At Haas, Ocon does remain correct there. I said Ryo Hirakawa would be alongside him, not Ollie Behrman. I, of course, was wrong. I went very much out there with my Ollie Behrman prediction, because then the Cadillac lineup, I got wrong on both drivers. I said it would be Colton Herta and Ollie Behrman, Ferrari-powered Cadillac. I thought maybe there would be an opportunity there, and Hirakawa would force Behrman out because of his Toyota link. Certainly wasn't the case. Instead, Perez and Bottas take the 2 seats. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 22 wrong. That's pretty bad, considering vast majority of the teams stayed the same. But just like I did last year, I'm going to start with my most confident pairing for 2027, the one I'm very, very sure is going to be correct, and end with my least. So, Mercedes. Yes, the talk around Max Verstappen to Mercedes is always going to be there, but for me, that is as far away as it's ever been. Like, why change? George Russell is almost certainly going to be a championship protagonist this year. Odds on, I think he's favourite to win it all. And Kimi's clearly shown already that he's got those peaks to fight at the front and be a top tier F1 driver in the not too distant future. It's a pretty clear 1 and 2 at the team that is sustainable. I think I just do not see Max in a Mercedes F1 car, particularly given how much Max does not like these rules. Audi with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto, once again, why would they change? I just don't see any logic there. You've got the experience, the tenacity of Nico, you've got the speed of Gabby, who I think probably slightly had the advantage over a lap versus Nico. Last season, Nico's class came alive in the races. Bortoleto's only going to get better. Hülkenberg's only going to get more settled into this Audi project as well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, surely. And the thing is, Audi, to develop this engine as well as the chassis, but they're doing their own engine and they're the only team running that engine. They need consistency in every facet, right? Regular, reliable engine data coming from your only 2 drivers. No need to change, surely not. Both do have multi-year deals over an undisclosed amount of time, but I would very much expect mid-season extensions for the pair of them. McLaren with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Look, if they can keep it so chill in an actual title fight, the fact that this year, I mean, it's not a fact yet, but it seems to be the case that McLaren isn't going to quite be up there with the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Lando and Oscar are going to be fine. I don't expect them to be winning many races in 2026, but they're still 2 top quality drivers who I don't think McLaren will have any issue keeping the harmony at the team. Now, Lando, of course, is a world championship. He's going into his 8th year in F1 at that same team now as well. He's got a multi-year deal that doesn't specify when it's going to end, but there's no way Lando is leaving McLaren. If it was to be either driver, it would be Oscar, and I just don't see another project big enough at this time to need Oscar Piastri to be competitive enough to pull him away from McLaren. Not to mention his existing deal keeps him to the end of 2027 at a minimum, so another team would have to pay the money to get him out of his contract. Red Bull, Max Verstappen, Isaac Hadjar. Look, I feel like I've seen enough already from testing from the Red Bull chassis and Red Bull powertrain Ford power unit to suggest that I think Max will give them the time of day. I don't think he'll look to jump ship to another team. In fact, I think there's enough there for me to feel pretty damn confident that Max will end his career in a Red Bull before moving on to pastures new. He's got his deal at Red Bull Racing until the end of 2028. Does he stay for that long? I think that depends on the competitiveness of the car. But again, I definitely don't see him racing for another team in Formula One. And as for Isaac, look, this new generation Red Bull, I have belief that they will have learned from the mistakes of years prior. As much as Red Bull had so much success with Max at the top, that second seat was continually disappointing. And I think Hadjar is the driver to buck that trend. Has had an incredibly impressive first season in Formula One, and I think will continue to do so. We'll close that gap to Max, not completely, not by any stretch, but I think it will be way more respectable. I think Isaac will be the closest driver since Daniel Ricciardo to Max Verstappen in a Red Bull racing car. And as much as Isaac's deal only takes him to the end of this year, I again expect a mid-season extension for him. Williams, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, I am gutted for them both as drivers. They were very much sold a dream, and I'm sure James Vowles believed that they could deliver a potential title fighting car in 27-28, but it seems a way off, doesn't it? However, I still feel that both drivers will give Williams, again, these 2 years at least of this new regulation cycle for them to catch up. All of the parts delays and infrastructure issues will come with time. They will get better. The issue for them is, of course, keeping hold of two drivers who are at their respective peaks in terms of age anyway. You'd think they're in their primes. And so how do they stop them getting away, especially Carlos Sainz, right, who is a proven race winner. But like I said with Piastri, I just don't see a opportunity opening that's massively better than where they are at the moment. As much as in this specific moment, it seems a bit stinky. Both of their deals are labelled as multi-year, so hard to say for sure the exact mechanisms in which they could leave, but I think they will stay put. I think Alex has built a lot of loyalty to this team as well. 90 race starts, making him third highest all-time in Williams, only 5 behind Nigel Mansell. By round 6 Miami, Alex Albon will be the most prolific Williams driver of all time. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, Franco Colapinto with a full pre-season, right? Some solid ground to build on top of the, financial benefits that come with Franco Colapinto. I think we'll see a much better version of the Argentinian this year. And given how late on, 6 races in, chucked into a seat of a car that was fundamentally pretty different to the Williams he'd driven before, new power unit, all that, I just think he did okay. He averaged like a quarter of a second off of Gasly, and Gasly's an absolute demon in one lap pace. He's got a lot of ceiling, in my opinion, to grow into. So we will see. I expect an extension for Franco mid-season because, again, he's got a deal ending at the end of this year. And then Pierre, look, again, I rate Pierre incredibly highly. He's probably only gone up in my estimations. It's just hard to see, like I said for Sainz, like I said for Piastri, an opportunity that is vastly better, because I do think there's some serious potential upside to Alpine now they're running the Mercedes power unit. I think that team is worth his loyalty. Plus, he has a deal at Alpine till the end of 2028. So again, if anyone else did want him, they would have to cough up the moolah. Cadillac, I'm sticking with Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. I think to really gain the benefit of having two drivers with that much experience, you need to give them at least a couple of years. Give them time to embed themselves in the team, especially at this early point where there's not really an expectation that they finish any higher than P22 and P21. In the future, when they've got some performance on the car, then you can maybe justify going with a young upstart who might be a bit riskier, right? But they're two very solid pairs of hands, and I think it would be pragmatic, sensible to stick with them. Now, perhaps Colton Herta can accrue the required super license points in F2 this year, which would give them a decision to make. Absolutely. Perhaps whoever's weaker from Bottas, Perez makes way for Colton. you're asking for a lot of things to work out. And even then, Colton is a bit of a risk, bit crashy in IndyCar for sure. As much as I rate him incredibly highly, he is a riskier choice objectively than keeping Valtteri or Checo again. So for the greater good of the team, I think they stay put. Also, both of them are on multi-year deals, Bottas and Perez, for 26 and 27. So again, something would have to move. Someone would be having to get paid off if Colton Herta was to make his way in. Ferrari, first change, Charles Leclerc and Ollie Bearman. I'm saying it. I suspect 2026 will be Lewis Hamilton's final season in Formula One. I've given this a lot of thought, and I just see too many different eventualities out there that result in Lewis probably leaving, and they're not all bad, right? Some of them are amazing. I mean, look, let's say this season the Ferrari's not in a great place, and Charles and Lewis are, fighting in the midfield, and maybe Charles gets the better of Lewis, maybe Lewis gets the better of Charles even, but they're a mile off the Mercedes powered cars by the end of the year. Red Bull have found something as well. Like, I think Lewis can look at himself and be like, right, I gave it a go. The Ferrari experiment ultimately has failed. It didn't work for Vettel, it didn't work for Alonso either. Many a great driver has been undone by the Ferrari nonsense, and it's a sad ending to what was the most hype F1 transfer ever. But he can bow out on his own terms. He gave it a go. It wasn't to be. Another reality, right? Ferrari is amazing, fantastic. It's fighting at the very front for race wins, possibly to win a driver's championship. In my opinion, if that is the case, I think Charles would be the driver to capitalise more often than Lewis and win the quali head-to-head and finish the season with more points. I just think Charles Leclerc in his prime, in the same way if Lewis was 29 years of age in his prime, I'd back him, but it's not the case. And this is what I think would happen if the Ferrari has the most competitive package, and I think Lewis would find out all he needs to know from the 2026 season. I do think these cars will suit him better, but I still think Charles will have that edge. And maybe Lewis could try again in 27 to beat Charles Leclerc in a top tier Ferrari. Maybe he'd back himself to give it another go. I don't think he'd win that battle. And one more reality, Ferrari's the best car. Lewis digs deep, discovers the prime that is shown over many a year, and beats Charles Leclerc in a Ferrari and wins the 2026 F1 World Drivers' Championship, making it surpassing Michael Schumacher with the all-time record. Like, what better time to bow out at the very top, delivering Ferrari's first driver's title since Kimi Raikkonen in 2007, 19 years ago, solidifying himself in many people's eyes as the greatest to ever do it, proving so many people, myself included, wrong. That would be the perfect time for him to hang up his gloves for sure. Now, Lewis does have a multi-year deal, and Charles Leclerc isn't going anywhere. His deal is reportedly to the end of 2029. But also with Ollie Bearman doing his thing in the Haas, I think being very, very, very impressive in 2025. I think Ferrari have that top talent waiting in the wings who would fit into that seat pretty perfectly. And in a way, I think Lewis would maybe find some fulfillment in himself as well, handing that seat to another young British driver. We know he's a huge advocate for the next generation, is Lewis. And I just feel like one way or another, that Ferrari SF27 will be driven by Ollie Bearman and not Lewis Hamilton. Aston Martin, I'm sticking with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, but this is quite far down the list because I'm not confident. However, first of all, Lance is not losing this seat, is he? We've predicted this many a time that he's going to finally depart, and the WEC opportunity being there feels like that's the one. Go on, Lance, you could do bits in WEC for sure. But alas, this is what I think's actually going to happen, and I've kind of given up predicting that one. So I do think, as much as Yuki would be a clear upgrade on Lance Stroll, I'm sticking with Lance alongside Fernando. You can definitely justify Fernando leaving as well, given how bad the start of this season has been. However, I am holding on to the hope, the belief that Honda will get their act together. It might take them, 4 races, 8 races, 12 races. It might take them the whole year, right? but they will get their act together eventually. The PU will be much of a muchness relative to the Ferrari, the Mercedes, the Red Bull, Ford. Newey will cook, and there will be enough hope, you know. Yes, again, it's a false start right now, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. With Newey at the wheel, perhaps Fernando can keep himself fresh enough that 27 is that opportunity. I know we keep kicking this can down the road, but one more time, come on. Let's just struggle through 26 for a brighter 27. Because you have to remember, as much as Honda's reputation in Formula 1 isn't necessarily the greatest, it's certainly up and down, right? And the downs have been very, very low, but the peaks have been hella impressive. So let's all hope we can bring it together. Otherwise, we might see Fernando Alonso in a Valkyrie in Le Mans. Because, of course, well, he said it himself, didn't he? This is a lifetime project with Aston Martin in some way, shape or form. However, the one thing I will predict is that in 27, Yuki Tsunoda will become an Aston Martin test and reserve driver. He's not right now, he's Red Bull at the minute, but I reckon he'll make the move next year. Racing Bulls, and I am sticking with Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad. Now, Nicholas Solov appears to be the Red Bull Junior with the most momentum behind him to potentially force himself into a Racing Bull seat in 2027. The 19-year-old Bulgarian is competing in Formula 2 this season, and from the 4 weekends we saw him do at the end of last year's F2 season, I think he'll be in a pretty good place. He managed a podium. If he can win it, he gives Red Bull a decision to make, absolutely. But there's so many talented drivers in F2 this year, and also you got to be at the right team. It's not as much of a spec series as we would like it to be. So he will be hoping the stars align for him, and Lindblad and Lawson, particularly Lawson, will be hoping they don't. But for me, again, I think Red Bull will stick with Lindblad and Lawson in 2027. A couple of main reasons why. Firstly, I think this new management approach will have more patience with the younger drivers. Laurent Mekies has worked with Liam Lawson extensively during his time at Racing Bulls, so knows what he's capable of. Arvid Lindblad has massive upside, the youngest F2 race winner of all time to boot, and of course Helmut Marko, who is running the junior program, is gone now. I also get the impression Red Bull senior management will lean more on this team as a sister team than a junior team, right? I know this has been talked about in the past, but actually I think this team can stand on its own 2 feet rather than just being seen as a funnel to the senior team. Remember, all F1 teams are profitable these days. That wasn't the case when Dietrich Mateschitz decided to buy 2 Formula 1 teams. Red Bull HQ don't have to justify losses, massive financial losses, keeping a second team going, because they're both valuable commodities right now that can have their own sponsors, that can make their own merch, that can build their own fan base. Now, one caveat, do I ever see Red Bull allowing Racing Bulls to be the quicker car? No, I do not. That would be very awkward. However, a more autonomous Racing Bulls is what I see for the future, and Lawson gives that consistency, right? Give Lindblad the time to grow. Perhaps Max, you know, leaves F1 in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then maybe you've got a Hajar Lindblad line up in the Red Bull. Like, you've got to build for the future, because the reality is Max is not going to be in F1 forever. And I don't think anyone knows that more than Red Bull Racing. And of course, both Lawson and Lindblad have deals ending at the end of this season. So I would expect mid-season. Actually, you know what? Not mid-season. I reckon Red Bull will leave it late to confirm, but I do think they'll both get extended. Haas, I've gone Esteban Ocon and Jack Doohan. Now, this is the least confident prediction of the lot. There are 4 names in particular that stand out to me: Ryo Hirakawa, Ritomo Miata, Rafael Kamara, and Dino Beganovic, who all could step into that seat if Ollie Behrman is to depart to Ferrari, which of course is my prediction. But instead I've settled on Jack Doohan, who, if you didn't know, is test and reserve driver for Haas alongside Ryo Hirakawa for this 2026 season. Now, starting with the Toyota affiliated boys, of course, hugely talented racing drivers have won multiple World Endurance and Super Formula titles between them. For Rio, his biggest barrier is probably his age, really. Like, if he was to debut in F1 in 2027, he would be 33. And then Ritomo, as impressive as he was in Super Formula, it's really not worked out for him in Formula 2, has it? He was P19 in 2024, P17 last season. He's now on his 3rd different team. He's at High Tech this year alongside Colton Herta And it's kind of now or never for him, because the more time goes on from his Super Formula title win, the more those super license points disappear. Rafael Kamara and Dino Beganovic are two Ferrari-backed youngsters with big upside for sure. Of course, Haas have this relationship with Ferrari and they will look to utilize that. Kamara is back-to-back Formula Regional European and Formula 3 champion last year, won it at a canter with plenty of races still to go. And if he can win F2 this year, he will go back-to-back, which doesn't happen very often and surely means Ferrari need to find a seat for him somewhere. Maybe they have to make the call to get rid of Lewis for Ollie to then get Kamara in. Like, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. Beganovic won Formula Regional European himself 2 years prior to Kamara in 2022, but hasn't really had a standout season yet. He was 7th in F2 last year, which is decent. Got 1 race win and 3 P3 podiums. But I mean, for him to have a shot, he really needs to step up and outclass Kamara in F2 this year. Otherwise, Rafael is surely getting priority. Yet with all that in mind, I'm going for none of them. I'm going with Jack doing unceremoniously dropped after just 6 Grand Prix for Alpine. Who knows what could have been if that Ferrari hadn't spun and ruined his potential Q3 lap, should I say, in Australia. Now, he did make silly errors, no question, but I do think there was an underlying pace there that was starting to come good, and things worked out the way they did, didn't they? But I think choosing Haas to be test and reserve driver at was a very pragmatic choice. He's probably looked at Ollie's links to Ferrari and how well Ollie's doing, and Lewis being towards the end of his career, and thought there could be a way in here, and he might have played this perfectly. But like he did at Alpine, if he can really embed himself, immerse himself, carry himself, he seems very, very mature, does Jack, then he could find himself the best case to replace Ollie. And then Esteban staying as well, which I think to some people might be a bit of a surprise, because he didn't have a particularly good 2025, did he, relative to, again, a rookie who outclassed him more often than not. Komatsu's giving him a bit of a kick up the arse. If you purely look at the sporting result without going into details, for sure nobody's satisfied with Esteban's sporting result last year, right? He's a teammate against a rookie. Yes, amazing rookie, but nonetheless, he's got 10 years of F1 under his belt. He's a race winner. He's a podium finisher, so we expected more from him. Ouch. Now, Komatsu did go into more detail and said obviously a lot of it was, 50-50. Sometimes they couldn't get the car in a window for Esteban, but yeah, he definitely didn't deliver as much as he should have in 2025. I can say that more than any, and I rate Ocon highly than most people seem to. But you know what? I think this fairly public dressing down will only motivate Ocon more. And now that he's had that year to settle in the team, understand the nuances of the car and the environment around him, I am confident he will get better, and the team will look at Ollie leaving and be like, right, we should keep Esteban as a consistent figure. We've had Jack doing all the stuff on the back end for 26. We'll slot him in for 27, and that will put us in a simply lovely place going forward. Look, maybe this will be political. Maybe Toyota will force one of their drivers into that position. And certainly if Miata wins F2, but from what we've seen so far, that's probably not going to happen. So that's it. Only 2 changes from 22 drivers. Boring. Well, I'm sorry, right? I'm trying to get this correct, and that is usually the way. It's not every day that Lewis Hamilton joins bloody Ferrari. Leave me alone, right? Now, let me know your thoughts. Any random out there, give me a driver. Give me some interesting drivers who you think maybe have a shot at F1 in 2027. Alex Palou? Certainly not McLaren anyway. Apologies for the echo on this one. It will get better in time. Welcome to the new studio. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.